Hey guys, welcome to my legal classes. This is Ganesh Pujari, and in the series of interpretation of statutes, today we are going to cover meaning and definitions on interpretation of statutes. I am going to cover the meaning, I am going to cover important definitions, and finally I am going to discuss two very important case laws. Not taking much of your time, let's get into the first slide. Let us start the discussion with the term interpretation. Now, the word interpretation has derived from the Latin term interpretari, and the meaning of term interpretari is to explain or to expound or to understand or to translate. The simple meaning of the term interpretation can be the action of explaining the meaning of something. You are seeing something, and if you are explaining them, that action is called as interpretation. But when it comes to statutes, of course, we are discussing about written documents. That part I will come later. Now I am giving two important dictionary meanings, that is Webster Dictionary and Black's Law Dictionary. Webster Dictionary says action of explaining the meaning of something or the way something is explained or understood is interpretation. Now that's a normal dictionary, but coming to the law dictionary, that is Black's Law Dictionary, it says the act or process of discovering and expounding the intended significance of the language used in any written document. The meaning which the author wants to convey to others is called interpretation. Here see, we are discussing about the importance of the author and we are discussing about the written document. The interpretation is about the intended meaning of the author. That is very important. If legislature has made some laws, the interpreter has to understand it in the way that legislature wanted it to be. That is very important. That is what discussed here in Black's Law Dictionary. In a simple manner, if you ask me to put it, a legal meaning for the term interpretation can be the art or process of determining the intended meaning of a written document. And remember, the interpretation of written document is fundamental to the process and practice of law. It is very important skill that every one of us should have. Then comes the term statutes. Statutes are the bread and butter for every legal professional. Now we need to know the meaning of statutes. What are statutes? Statutes are the written law passed by a legislative body, or statutes are the law made by a sovereign. Now sovereign can be different. There can be presidential model of government or the parliamentary form of government, or there can be dictatorship also, and we have seen some countries who went with military ruling, etc. So whatever is the form of government, the law made by them is called as statutes. Statutes is deriving from the term statutum, and it is believed that Henry III was the first person to use the term statutes. Now when I am discussing about the statutes, I think about the analytical school father when we were discussing the jurisprudence, that is Sir John Austin. He says the command of the sovereign issued to his subjects to follow a particular course of conduct, failing which they will be faced with evil consequences, namely punishment. Here the command, when it comes in written form, they are called as statutes. In a nutshell, if you ask me what is interpretation of statutes, you can refer my yellow box. There I have given, that is IOS, interpretation of statutes is equal to correct understanding of law. Now that is what we are going to understand from this entire subject, how to correctly understand the law. Now how exactly the process goes here, that is what my last chart is all about. Now there is a source, that is the legislature. Legislature makes the law and then they are discussed in the court, that is the channel. Courts are the channel and they interpret the law and they deliver justice to the receiver, that is to the parties in a suit or proceedings. That is how the entire process is managed. Now let us see few important definitions on interpretation of statutes in my next slide. Solomon says the process by which the court seeks to ascertain the meaning of the legislature through the medium of authoritative forms in which it is expressed is called interpretation of statutes. Basically, for Solomon, he gives importance to the process followed by the court, and why that process is followed by the court? To seek or to understand the meaning of the legislature through the medium of authoritative forms. Now, legislature has made certain laws, and the process by court which is followed to understand the meaning or what exactly meant by legislature is called as interpretation of statutes by Solomon. Cross says interpretation is the process by which the court determine the meaning of a statutory provision for the purpose of applying it to the situation before them. The courts will have different situation. Now the courts have the support of statutory provisions, and the process of understanding and implementing the statutory provision for their situation which they have in the court hall is called as interpretation of statutes by Cross. Basically, if you see Solomon and Cross, they both are going hand in hand. First, they are saying it is a process. Secondly, they are saying legislature has made law and court has a scenario where it need to understand and determine the meaning of that particular law, and that process is interpretation of statute as far as Solomon and Cross are concerned. Gray takes one step forward. He says interpretation is the process by which a judge constructs from the words of the statute book a meaning which he either believes to be that of the legislature or which he proposes to attribute it. He just goes one step forward where he adds proposes to attribute it. Otherwise, he is quite hand in hand with Solomon and Cross. The last definition, that is from Cooley, he says interpretation is the art. Now remember his words. It's very interesting. Interpretation is the art. Yes, interpretation is the art in our normal life also. But interpretation of statute is a beautiful art, and one who knows it wins a lot of cases. That is also one very important aspect we need to remember. And Cooley says interpretation is the art of finding out the true sense of any form of words. That is, the sense which their author intended to convey, and of enabling others to derive from them the same idea which the author intended to convey. Now here he gives a lot of importance to the legislature also. Who is the author? Author is the legislature. When court interprets, it needs to find the true sense of forms of words. These words are coming from legislature, and when they are interpreting them, that is called as interpretation of statutes. And here the very important aspect coming from Cooley's definition is the court needs to give lot of importance to the intention of the author or the legislature. That is what he stresses upon, and with that I am taking you to case laws. The first case law that I am referring here is Seaford Court Estate Limited versus Asher. In this case law, Lord Denning LJ beautifully explained the responsibility of a judge. He says the English language is not an instrument of mathematical precision. Now what happens in maths? If I ask you what is 1 plus 1, you will say 2. And if we ask this question in any part of the world with anyone, the answer will always remain 2, because that is mathematics. But when it comes to English, it is not so. There can be different meaning coming in, and sometimes the legislature may fail to give a right word. And if there is an error, a judge cannot fold his hands and blame the draftman. Instead, he should try to give force and life to the intention of the legislature. That is what Lord Denning LJ says. The judge should interpret the statute in such a way that he should give force and life to any of the statute as intended by the legislature. That is the responsibility of the judge, and that is what told by Lord Denning in this case law. The second case law, that is B. Banerjee versus Anita Pan. Here in this case law, Justice V. Krishna Iyer in the Honorable Supreme Court of India held that if there are two interpretations are possible, and among those two interpretations, one validates the statute and the other one invalidates the statute, in that case the preference should always given to that aspect which validates the statutes. That means the interpretation of statute should always go in such a way which validates the intention of statute. That is very important, which is what held by V. Krishna Iyer in this particular case law. There are a lot of materials which says that this was held in the case law of Santi Swarup Sarkar versus Pradeep Kumar Sarkar. Remember, it was not held in Santi Swarup Sarkar versus Pradeep Kumar Sarkar. Actually, in this case law, Kolkata High Court referred the judgment from B. Banerjee versus Anita Pan. It was held by V. Krishna Iyer in B. Banerjee versus Anita Pan, and later the same was referred in Santi Swarup Sarkar versus Pradeep Kumar Sarkar. That is one another aspect you can remember. And now you might be having one very important question in your mind. Why interpretation of statutes? What are the objects? Now that's what exactly I'm going to deal in my next class. Until then, thank you so much for watching me, and I am handing it over to Nishan.
How many friends do you have? If you have more friends, you'll have more fun. So have lot of friends. With that, I'm concluding this session. Please subscribe our channel. Please like, share and comment our videos. Thank you. Bye-bye.